Hello friends, how you going? Thank you for joining me yet again. We've got some great Nikon news and tips and tricks to show today, so I thought I'd run you through a few of those very briefly. We've got a very exciting product announcement from Nikon, which I think is very excited and long anticipated. Now everybody knows, if you've been watching my videos, that I have the 50mm here, the 1.2, and it's a fantastic prime lens, and I've highly recommended it, and I believe it's quite an excellent product. Even though it's a little bit bulky and it's quite expensive, it's well worth every cent, I believe, for its versatility. So anyway, they've announced a product announcement that they're developing the 85mm similar version. So it's an 85 1.2, and it's going to be a brilliant portrait lens, I believe. So I'm very excited about it. I've spoken about it in the past, my anticipation of this. 85mm, for example, is an excellent focal length for doing headshots or waist-up shots for portraits. So I very much enjoy using that. It's actually a pretty good video length too if you're a little bit further away from your subjects. You can get a nice crisp isolation. So the F1.2 means it's going to be extremely bright, so fantastic for any low light situations where you're relying on natural light, for example, or indoors, that sort of use. But it's also brilliant for the fact you get a wonderful shallow depth of field. So being able to have that focal length and a shallow depth of field and a bright lens as well is an excellent package. So let's just go through the scenario of this. So I'll show you a few 85mm photos that I've taken. I'll just put them on the corner here and you'll see how they render and look. And that was taken with the 85 1.8 S lens with the Nikon Z7 II. So I had that lens for some time, about 18 months, and it was a brilliant lens and worked extremely well. Sharp, light, versatile, and very practical. But I've got rid of the 85 because I had the 50 1.2 and the 70 to 200, and I was very happy using those instead. So I sold the 85 in anticipation of a brighter aperture lens appearing, and now the 85 1.2 is on the horizon. I don't think it'll be very long at all, and I'm quite excited about obtaining that for portraits. Now, what's the excitement about the 85 focal length? Well, it just means that you can get far enough away from your subject where you're not intrusive to them, but still at a distance we are able to communicate. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. Here I have the 50 1.2, and if I want to do a headshot with this, I've pretty much got it about here, which is starting to get a bit proximity-wise, a bit too close to get a headshot. Plus it does start at 50mm, slightly a wider angle. It starts to balloon out the face where the nose and the front of the face becomes a little forward and the back of the face is quite fuzzy and stretched out, and it's not a great look for a headshot. So really as a headshot lens, the 50 is not perfect. It doesn't do a bad image, it's not a terrible shot, and I will illustrate some headshots you can get away with taking with a 50mm. It's just not the ideal perfect focal length for headshots, but awesome for waist up or body shots. Then it's fantastic. Or a couple, so if you've got a couple in the frame, then it can work really well. But as far as headshots or anything from waist up, you really want to be using at least an 85mm. And by 85 I mean that's the minimum focal length, not the maximum. I actually believe, in all honesty, the perfect focal length for doing just a headshot is anything between, I'd say, 135mm to 200mm. Because you see, because you're getting so small a subject into the frame, you can afford still, you're getting in right close to them anyway. So you're not very far away. So even up to 200mm, you're not miles away doing a headshot. It's still at a reasonable talking distance. But 135 I found to be perfect. Problem with 135 in this instance and context is it also doesn't give you the versatility then to go and get a broader shot or a wider angle shot to get more in the frame. So the advantage of having the 50 and the 85 is you can have a very wide angle, which is awesome, and then you can also have the 85, which then gets you nice and tighter in without any extreme distortion or bloating of the face. So it actually does work very well as a combination, 50 and 85. This is something I've used extensively for years, and I think it's awesome. Way back in the day when I was using the DSLRs, and then I would have the G lenses, I would have a 50mm and an 85, and then I'd also have a 135mm 1.8, and that gave me that full range of comfort of getting in tight if I needed to without intimidating the subject with the lens stuck straight in their face. And that's a big factor. But 85 is a great compromise. So it's going to be very expensive, I hate to tell you. I'm sorry to break your heart there, but just as this one for Australian dollars was about $3,300 or about 2.5 US, the new 85 is probably going to be, for Australian audience, about 3,600 when it comes out, maybe even up to 3,800. $3,800, and eventually it will trickle down in price and there'll be specials and bargains in the future, but initially it's going to be pretty expensive. Now, that's not nearly always a bad thing because you know you're getting quality. They wouldn't be charging you a lot if the lens was rubbish. So obviously they're charging a lot, it's a damn good lens. And you've got to take that as it is. It's just how camera gear is. The better quality it is, the more expensive. You go and buy yourself a medium format lens, you'll know what I'm talking about. You go buy a Leica lens, you'll know what I'm saying. They're not cheap, but they're very good. And it's the same with these S-series lenses, these F1.2s. They're not going to be inexpensive, but you will get a lot of bang for your dollar. So you'll get a great product. These things are incredibly sharp at f1.2, and that's an important factor to bring out. So it's not like you've got to stop them down to get a decent image and go to f2 or f2.8 before it gets them sharp. They are sharp at f1.2 on. So you don't have to make any compromises, which is a complete contrast to a couple of other lenses in the Nikon range. So if I remember the old, what was it, the 50mm f1.4 G lens. Now that was a great lens, but it was quite soft at 1.4 when it was wide open. The same with the recent S lens, the 40mm f2. Very good lens for its value for money. It was an inexpensive budget lens, but at f2.8 beyond it was fantastic, but it was marketed as an f2, and at f2 it was soft. I'm sorry, it just is. So there are some that are magnificent wide open, some that aren't, but you can be damn sure that these f1.2 lenses will be sharp wide open, and that's why you're paying the big money, to get that reliability and quality. Now I highly recommend it. 85's, as I say, a magnificent focal length if you're into doing a lot of portraits. It is great. If you want to save some money, however, and spend half the amount of money, there is also an option of a Sigma lens. So if you were to buy, for example, it's not perfectly the same, but it's close enough, it's very similar, you could buy there 85 1.4. That's pretty close at least, and it is remarkably cheaper. I think you can buy them second-hand from Japan in pristine condition, and you can get them for probably just over $1,200 at the worst, and that's about a third of the price of this brand new 85 1.2. So for value for money wise, there's another option for you. The other option, of course, is Sigma. We're talking about their lenses. They also make a 105mm 1.4. Now that would render almost identical to the 85 1.2, maybe not quite as bright, but certainly you get a great shallow depth of field the same, and it would give a beautiful rendered portrait headshot. So that is another choice if you're trying to save a bit of money, cut it down by half the cost as it were. There's some options that are real and realistic to have as a choice. Now, I do believe, I've heard in the rumour vine, and we're talking about rumours and upcoming developments, that Sigma, for example, is starting to produce some lenses for Nikon Z line, so and the S lens line. So that'll be magnificent. So what we'll do is we'll end up getting maybe some zooms, wide zooms, we might get some long telephotos, and we might also get a few primes from them. And one of those primes could very well be an 85 1.4 or a 105 1.4. After all, when you think about it, Nikon are not making those. Nikon are not making 1.4 lenses, so it's not really encroaching on their market. They're making either the 1.2s or they're making 1.8s. So should Sigma bring out an 85 1.4, or they bring out a 105 1.4, well, they're very useful lenses in that sort of range and very similar appearance and look for about half the money, I believe. So I think there's something to consider for the future, but at the moment, let's try and punch with these S lenses, because after all we're supporting Nikon then, and of course we're getting our very best option available. But I like to put out some cheaper versions just to keep the budget-friendly people happy. And I'm not immune to that either. I've owned Sigma lenses before. My favourite of their lenses was actually the 135mm f1.8. So it wasn't a 1.4 or 1.2, but it had the great focal length of 135. And let me tell you, at 135 mils at 1.8, you get a really nice shallow depth of field. Don't feel like that's compromising in any way. The depth of field is very, very, very small. So it's a great option and a beautiful, sharp and bright lens. So you're not compromising much there, but as I say, if you can support Nikon, I encourage you to do so if that's a valid option for you. So I'm excited about that lens. The other lens update they're bringing out is a 26mm f2.8, and that's a little pancake lens. So it's a tiny little lens, a little bit broader than a lens cap, if you like. I think there's options for that. There's uses. You're going in a travel situation where you want to keep everything light and small in your camera bag. So you might have a full frame body, but you don't necessarily want to bring around big whopping lenses like this, which are going to weigh a lot and take up a lot of space. So a little pancake lens like that, if you can get a few ranges of those, so you might have this 26 2.8, which is very small and light, and then if you want something a little bit bigger, you could very well have, say, the 50 1.8. That's a great lens too, and quite good value for money. And those two in your bag gives you quite a reasonable range of a wide and a little bit of a, you know, medium mid-range lens, and you're saving a bit of weight. So would I also recommend something like the 24 to 70 f4 to travel around with? Absolutely I would. It's a brilliant little sharp lightweight travel lens. So in that context of these lighter weight, cheaper lenses, these are some real valid and relatively great options, and I've owned them all other than this you know, pre-production model that's coming out soon. But I did have the 28mm 2.8. That was a little pancake lens, and that was a brilliant lens too. Now, have I still got that? No, I owned it, I've used it, and I've moved on and sold it. And the reason being is nothing to do with the fault of that lens. That was a great little compact lens, very, very sharp, looked beautiful because it was a retro style version I had, and I had that predominantly on my ZFC there. But the reason I moved on from that wasn't because of it was no good, it wasn't because of its plastic mount. And a lightweight lens like that weighs only a couple of 100 grams. The plastic mount is irrelevant. That's neither here nor there, because the idea of a metal mount is for strength and robustness. And when you've got something that weighs nothing, that's sort of irrelevant, isn't it? But that was a good lens, a 28mm f2.8 little compact retro style lens for your ZFC, or full frame lens if you wanted to use it for that. It was great and compact, light little lens, and was brilliant. So I highly recommend that lens actually. The reason I moved on is simply so I went some 1.8 primes. I had a 20mm 1.8 prime. I had a 35mm 1.8 prime, which I might add I'm actually shooting with right now. I've got the ZFC with the screen flipped out so I can see myself here, and I'm being able to view myself and see I'm in focus, and it's a great vlogging option and home video option. So I'm using that camera right now, and I'm using it with the 35mm f1.8 S lens at 1.8, and it's doing a brilliant job. So having the 20 and the 35, I really had no use for a 28. It was sort of neither one or the other. I can just make do with those. So I just try and trim my stock down. I used to have like a dozen lenses, and that was great. You know, you had a million choices, but the problem is I used to find that out of those 12 lenses, I would only ever use about 4 of them anyway consistently, and the other ones were rarely pulled out of the bag or used, maybe once or twice a year. So it just seems silly having so many different lenses, as good as they were, if you're not regularly using them. It has to be a focal length you're actually comfortable with and utilize a lot. And I do use 20mm particularly a lot for my Ronin S when I'm doing the stabilizing work and moving around with video. I find that wide angle is just fantastic for moving around and getting a great look. And if I need something a bit tighter, I'll use the 35 that I'm using right now, and that's also fantastic. Get a little bit of shallow depth of field, just a little bit. And of course you've got the brightness of the 1.8, which means even in low light situations like evening or inside, you've got quite a bit of brightness there to work with without having to use lights if you don't have them with you. So I'm a big fan of the prime lenses, but I'm now getting very fussy and picking and choosing which sizes I have and making sure I actually use them consistently. So that's sort of pretty much the news that's coming out that's actually confirmed. Of course, the other relevant bit of information that I'm still clinging to and excited about is the Nikon Z, the actual camera, the Z8. And I think we are really, really close to that. I would say within the next 30 to 60 days, we'll definitely get a pre-production announcement or an actual physical release announcement, because I'm actually confident that these are in the hands of Nikon photographers, representatives already, and they're out there shooting with it, and I'm sure production is well underway on that, and when they do announce it or do release it, it will be just flood the market very soon. So it won't be like the Z9 where you've got to wait 12 months to get your hands on a camera. When the Z8 comes out, as it's a little bit more of a consumer style camera because it's a bit smaller in the body and more compact, still heavily featured of course, but the size does make a big difference. So having something with a smaller format, very similar at least to a Z7 or Z6, it does mean that of course it's more user-friendly for the majority of people, and certainly more usable for things like on Steadicams and stabilizers because it's lighter. So I think that'll be a great announcement. I'm very excited to see the specs. There's a lot of rumors about the specs. You know, is it going to be a mega high resolution camera, or is it just going to be basically a trimmed down smaller version of the Z9? Well, my opinion is it's actually going to be the trimmed down smaller version of the Z9 with almost all the same similar specs. Maybe it doesn't have the global shutter sort of arrangement that it has. It might have simply a more conventional system with the sensor, but however, it'll be fully feature packed with great, it'll have the great processor and great options inside. It'll certainly be a step up from the Z6, Z7, but nowhere near as heavy or expensive or feature packed as a Z9. And it'll actually make, I think, more of a common sense camera for those prosumers. It'll be a great thing to carry around in your bag without being a massive weight and bulk. And that is one of the big downsides of the Z9 and why I've never even considered getting one. Not because it isn't a great camera. I know it is a great camera. Everybody says so. It won Camera of the Year for a reason. It's a great camera, but it's just too big and heavy. The thing weighs like a couple of bricks and it's massive in your camera bag. And I just don't find that I want that. So if I want a grip camera, I can put a grip on my Z7 II there, and then I've got that battery grip if I need that for anything. But I love the fact I can actually remove it and take it off and have a compact camera when I want one. With the Z9 you don't get that option, it's always there. So anyway, talking about that was the Nikon releases and announcements that are definite, or at least we're very confident on. And the next thing I'd like to talk to you about, we go into a new stage now, is we're going to talk about these battery packs. Now I've been talking about cables, battery packs and the use of those with flashes for some time now, a few videos, and I've just got a minor update that I think I need to show you and bring out. So let me just bring these forward and we'll have a little talk about them. So just before I start talking about all this other gear, I just thought on a personal note I'd like to say, you might think, how come Mark's room's always so peaceful and quiet? You know, like you live alone or something in an apartment. Well, no, actually I do live in a home, it's a house, and I do have a family. In fact, I've got a wife, Tracy. And the reason it's always quiet here is because I only make these videos when she goes out shopping or working. So when I've got the house to myself and it's quiet, that's a beautiful opportunity to make a video. And no, I'm not being either rude to her or I've got noises in the background. The only person who's home when I'm here at the moment is the love of my life, Carla, my dog. So if I just show you here, I'll just show you a little picture here so you can get the idea what I'm talking about. So you'll see here, this is Carla, the love of my life. She's my little puppy dog, and she's a Coolie, which is a cross between a Border Collie and a Kelpie. She'll be here, but she's incredibly quiet. You'll hear no noise from her whatsoever. She'll just be sleeping in one of the other rooms. Now, did I have any children? Yes, I've got 2 boys. But they're in Melbourne at the moment because we've moved up to Queensland, have a bit of a sea change. They're grown up and they're living their lives. So that's fine. So everything's going quite well for me personally. I just thought I'd mention that to you. But if you thought, was he living alone and single and got no life? No, I've got a family, got a dog, everything's going well and work and I'm happy. But getting back to the point in question, was I've been showing you these various goods recently. And some of these battery packs, and I'll just bring the 2, excuse me, turning away from you for the time being, but I wanted to show you some of this equipment so you can understand what I'm talking about. Now, I've shown you this battery pack here, which is an awesome unit. I'll just open it up. Excuse the Velcro noise, I know that's very noisy. But if I bring this out, you'll see that this is the one that when I open it up, it has the batteries in it. So you can see here, it has, I got Duracell batteries, but it has 12 of these AA batteries, and that's a great kit for shooting with a Speedlight and knowing it's going to run all day, which is exactly what will happen with this unit. But how am I mounted and what do I use? Well, I just wanted to show you something that I've recently acquired just to make it a little bit simpler to put together. Now, this generally sits on your hip. You have it on your belt. So if you have a look here on the system it uses, it has this little cage here, little Velcro strap that holds the cable, and in here there are holes, and you can see the holes going through there, and those holes enable you to slip your belt through, and you belt it to your belt on the side of your pants, and that's one option you have of mounting it. Now, another option I've found that's better for me, that's actually faster and quicker for me, is I use this top area here which fastens it and secures it, and I bought a little clip. Now, this is just a simple little clip you buy at a hardware store. If I can show you it here, and it's really just this very interesting like A-frame clip. I've taped it together here with a bit of PVC tape, and that just stops it opening up for me when I don't want it to. So what I do is I just place it over the top of this, use the little flat side down the base there, put the Velcro back, and now it hooks onto this and it's very secure. So what I do is on my side here, I can now, when I wish to, clip this to the side of my belt very quickly using some couplings, something like one of these, and we can just clip this in. See, and any time I want, I can have this on my belt and clip it together very quickly. Now you may say to yourself, well, why don't you, Mark, just use the clip on the side here? Well, you can do that. But because I attach this to other attachments, other arrangements, such as I have camera straps, I have the cotton carrier system you may be familiar with, which is like a vest and harness, that has clips on it. So I already can use those clips just to quickly attach anytime I want. So the reason I have that fastened up is because I don't want it coming undone if I don't want it to. But I found that a great little system, and I wanted to show you that just to show you that that's a very comfortable thing to buy from the hardware store for about $2 or $3, and it just makes that carrying arrangement a little bit easier to clip onto something, whether it be a camera strap or not. And in fact, if I'm just talking about camera straps, let me just pop down here and grab one. Here is a camera strap here, and you'd put it over your shoulder, as you know, should you want to do it that way. And what I can do anytime I like is I can just clip it on. See, there we go. Clip it onto the other one if I should wish. Have both clipped on, and there you go. And you would have that swinging down by your side. I usually have it over the shoulder. Excuse me, I've got a microphone on, so I really don't like to do this while I'm doing a video. It makes a bit of racket and noise. But you can see here, you would strap it onto your side. It'll be carrying down there, and it takes all the weight, and it's very easy and comfortable to carry all day should you need it. So that's an option that you've got to carry it around with you, nice and quick and simple and easy, and pretty much everybody has a camera strap or something around. But the point of the exercise isn't just the camera strap today. There's actually quite a few features about this I'd like to show you. So I'm going to remove this camera strap because that's just going to dangle around at the moment and be a bit awkward and uncomfortable and noisy. So I'll just get rid of that right away because we're doing a video. And what I really want to talk to you about is these cables. Now, I have previously mentioned that I've stretched these out. I used a heat gun to make them a little bit longer. Now, why did I do that? Let me show you. I actually purchased just recently another accessory, another cable. But this is how they actually come. They actually come, this is a Nikon version, where this one here is the YONGNUO version. Well, that's actually the Nikon version 2. These ones are the YONGNUO versions for that camera. So they're a little bit of a different little buckle and clip. So I wanted a Nikon one specifically, and I'll explain why and how, and I'll just show you how that works. So this is for the YONGNUO system, but the cables are all the same when you buy them. But they're like this, they're tightly sprung. So see how tight and compacted they are in comparison to this and how open and wide that is? So I've stretched it because when you have this connected to yourself and your battery pack on the side, there's no length. The thing wants to just constantly pull out of your Speedlight, and I found that really annoying to have that tension where you've got it in, and every time you lift your camera up, it tries to pop the connection out. I think it's a pretty odd design that they made them that small. But anyway, it's easy to fix, and as I've said, I just wanted to show you what they actually look like when you purchase them. But all you need to do is stretch them out over a bench, clamp them down using a heat gun to soften the plastic, and they will stretch out and then stay outstretched, as you see here before you. But I wanted to show you that because that's really important to see how they came. Now, why have I purchased this? Well, I purchased it for the YONGNUO system, the GODOX system, because what I can do now with this, I can put this one in this apparatus here, which I purchased. And this is fantastic. What do they call this thing here? Let me just get my glasses because I can't read a thing without them. Fine print and all that over them. Oh yes, DB02. So this is the GODOX DB02 apparatus. It's a little Y junction. And what that does is you plug in your connector, whether it be Nikon or GODOX or Canon or whatever you happen to buy, whatever you're using for speedlights. And then here we have a double connector. So what does this do? What's the point of that? Well, it's actually doubling up the power of your unit, because when you buy these GODOX units, they have two sections here, as you can see. And what it's doing is it's dividing the battery into two sections. So what you're having now is half the battery here, half the battery here, and that empowers you to have, excuse me while I just remove some Velcro so you can see. It empowers you to have two cables here. I'm going to tangle them right now. Two cables. And then you can have two speed lights attached. So you can operate two at the same time from the same battery source. And that's a great idea, it's a great option. So you're not carrying two battery packs around. But the problem with that is, of course, you're also halving the power. So you go from a 1 second recycle time to a 2 second recycle time because it's splitting the battery in two. Well, how do you remedy that if you want it for one speed light, you want ultimate refresh time? Well, what you can do is you can unplug these two. And just put those cables down for the time being. And then what you can do is you put in this double adapter. So you buy this double adapter separately, and we're talking about a $20 item. It's not expensive. Don't be thinking that these adapters and connections are really expensive. They're not expensive at all. They just clip in very quickly, as you saw there. And now you can see it's brought it down into one system. And now I've got the full power of this battery, half into one. That goes into your Speedlight now. And that's powered that up. And when I've got that on my side strapped to me, now I've got full power of this GODOX unit. So I'm going to get like 1,000 flashes for the day at full power, and I get a 1 second recycle time. So that's really quick and easy, and it means that I never have to stress about losing a photo. So if you're worried about how you can use these GODOX systems and get maximum power out of them, well, that's what you do. You buy that little accessory, just making sure you buy the right connection for the camera and Speedlight you're using at the time, and that little double up system will be a great asset to you when you want to use it. You don't have to use it all the time, but it's nice when you want to. So I'll just remove that for now, because there's one other thing I would like to talk to you about. And the other thing I want to talk to you about is how we connect these things up, because this is actually really a big deal. So I've talked to you before about using these things and how awesome they are, and I'm just going to plug this one in to show you. So that's a Nikon cable going into a Nikon Speedlight. And I mentioned to you about sometimes the issue is that when you've taken photos of these, and you've got the thing down, so if I put this down to illustrate, and you're taking a photo, you feel a little, sometimes you can feel a little pressure on the cable, and that you're always concerned it might pull them out. And I've actually had it pull out the cable on occasion. Now, having stretched it makes a big difference. It gives you a lot more reach, and it's almost impossible to have that happen. But how do you guarantee that it will never pop out at the worst possible moment? Because you might think, well, is that really a big deal if it does pop out a little bit? Well, yes, it is a big deal, because even if this just comes loose and doesn't actually completely disconnect, but just comes loose and it doesn't work, you might not be knowing that it's not working all the time, because you are not looking at the flash. Hey, you're looking through the viewfinder, you might not notice it's not flashing off. So to guarantee that that's going to stay in and always be powered, I've got a little rig here, just a little attachment. And it's a very, very simple thing to put onto the cable. I'll show you some close-up photos. Don't worry if you can't see from there, I understand. But it's a tiny little clip. Now what that tiny little clip is, it's just a micro version of one of these. So fortunately I have another one to show you. It's a titanium clip. It's a simple titanium little clip, very, very basic. What I've got there is the smaller version. So they come in two versions. I think it's something like a 56mm, which that one is. And then this one here that I'm using on this cable is the 36mm version. So it's just smaller and lighter. But believe me, it's every bit as strong as stainless steel, but at about, a quarter of the weight. It weighs as if it's aluminium, but it's as strong as stainless steel. And so that way I have no lack of confidence it's always going to be strong and stay there. But what I've done is, in order to secure it, you might be able to see these two little bulges there. And those two little bulges are just simply a bit of PVC tape. So I'll put some PVC tape just so it can't slide out of position, either side, and that just guarantees it locks it in position. I put a little tiny bit of super glue just on the end of the tape so it doesn't peel away. And then securing that as I have now, that little clip, I can now clip it to my ring there and make sure it's nice and secured. So I can pull on that all I like now. Pull, pull, pull. It makes no difference to the connection here onto the Speedlight. I can't pull it off because it's actually just tugging the camera. It's not tugging the Speedlight cable. So that's just a little guarantee, a little securing point that I think is a great idea to make sure you're not pulling the cable out while the Speedlight, and that happening at the worst possible moment when you're trying to capture that very important moment. So again, I just wanted to reiterate that this is not something you have to do essentially. It's not critical, but I found it to be a smart and secure little way of making sure everything is secured. It's very quick to connect too. This is not something that causes you a big bother. It's only one little clip. It's done with the use of, a simple finger, and off it comes very lightly. You may notice that I've got quite large rings on my camera. I've taken off the very small triangular ones that they have. They actually work fine and work well, but I like the idea of having these larger little like keyring size ones, because it just means that any sort of size clip I happen to use, however big or bulky it happens to be, it will always fit and actually lock onto these without fidgeting around too much. So a little bit of extra effort putting these on just means everything else is so much less effort later on and less frustrating. So I like these larger keyrings. You may hate them, that's your choice. Certainly not suggesting you must have them, but I've had them and I found they work quite well. So there's some little attachments that I thought might have been interest to you. It also works with the Speedlight trigger system. So if you're using these apparatus and you want to use an off-camera flash arrangement, you can certainly do that, and I'll just walk you through that very quickly. So I have a little diffuser here, so if I'm doing a festival or something like that, I'll use my little diffusers here, and I'll just pop it on so you can get an idea what we're looking at. It just straps on pretty much very quickly. It's not a big process. The trick is just to make sure that they're nice and tight and secure so they actually stay on. So there we go, we've got that on now. And here we have a nice diffuser setup, and I can use that as a radio trigger. I'll just turn that on. Maybe I should turn the light on too, that might actually help, eh? Then when I put my trigger onto the camera, here we go, turn everything on, and it's all ready to go. It's all synchronized now, and I can use it where I wish. Now you might say, okay, let's have a look at how these work. Well, let's say I put this onto my side here. I'm just illustrating I would have done that. So I'm just going to mount the Nikon cable to the Nikon Speedlight. There we go, we're in. And now you've got your cable, of course, and it'll be all secured. And you can have now an off-camera flash setup. So now I can have this in any angle I want, have it out to the far extremity. I can take my photos and get a bit of angularity with the light. I can bring it in closer if I should need to. I can bring it in back or higher if I want, angle it in any way. And when I want to take a photo, there it goes off every time. And I also have a bit of diffused light now. So I very much encourage people to use off-camera flash where at all possible. The only time you really want to be using a flash on top of the camera is something like sports action or something to that effect. Otherwise, it's quite an unglamorous situation. So I thought I'd run you through those that could be interesting for you. Another little tip and trick I got that I bought something very recently that I think is a big help is this item here. Now I bought this metal. It's a Selens product, and it's a metal adapter for your light stand to your accessories. So if you're putting on a light, like an LED light, and it's got one of these like pin systems, you can put it in here and secure it. So I'll just open that up so you can see what I'm talking about. It comes in 2 sections. So I'll just open that up so you can see it is actually 2 sections. But sometimes all you need is something like that where you can mount your accessories to it, just screw them in to the mount. Now this mount, of course, when they come with this product, they give you these, and it has, of course, the 1/4 and the 3/8 thread. So depending on what you want to mount, you can use that. And of course the other one can go into the other end, and that's awesome if you've got a thread and you want to attach it to a thread. So you can use it either way, upside down, in and out. You can join them together, of course, if you want to actually form a plug. So what can you do here? You just put them in like this. Click them together like that. And there you go, they can just slot into a system or mount. So they're quite versatile. I bought this from Selens for about $24. I highly recommend it, and the reason why I highly recommend this one rather than any of the plastic ones is because it's all metal and it's really strong. And you know what I find is exasperating is when you angle these things, they've got angles on them and you can rotate them around. So you just loosen it up a bit and see you can put it in this angle, you can have it straight up, put it across. But if you have it on an angle such as this, maybe it's about 25 to 30 degrees, and you put all your fittings on, you've got a heavy light on because you want it angulated down for whatever reason. You're doing that, and then of course these plastic ones, they can just seep and move. They just don't hold tight because there's just not enough strength to them. These metal ones here from Selene I found to be amazing. They're incredibly strong and they never disappoint. So you never break them, they don't seep or weep or sag in any way, and I feel absolutely confident that they're going to stay on because they are a metal item. And very importantly, and this is the thing, these little accessories I was telling you about that come with it, these are metal too. And I don't mean aluminium. These are not cheap, nasty aluminium. These are what I believe to be something like a chrome-plated brass or steel, because they are incredibly strong. They've got a lot of weight to them, and they will last you forever. They're really robust. And I love parts that are metal. So when you get something metal, you pay maybe a couple of extra dollars for it, but highly recommended product, this little Selens unit here. I'm loving that. And the last but not least of the little accessories I wanted to run you through that I found very handy is this product here. So here what we've got is, it's a lot of words here, but it's cord tech, and it's Velcro strips for your cable tying. So I've had cable ties for years, but very often they're a permanent fixture. So you put something on and then you can't get the damn thing off again to reuse it. The beauty of these things are they're specifically designed for tying up cables, keeping them neat and tidy. Because they're Velcro, they're completely reusable. So when you buy the pack, and it's only like about I don't know what it was, less than $10, maybe somewhere like $5 to $10. You get a strip of 20. So there's actually 20 of these little strips. You can just peel them off as they go. And what they are is they're soft on one side and they're the loop on the other side. And of course, all you do is you double them over and then you've got a strong connection. So let's say we're going to tie some cables up together. You just strap them around and there you go. And now they're fixed, firm, and they stay together. And when you're fed up with that and you want to open them up, you can in an instant. So they're very strong, they stay together, but I highly recommend you getting some of these Velcro cable ties. They're magnificent for these sort of units too, when you want to bind them up. If you want to bind them up like this, and then make sure that everything is safe and together and doesn't wriggle around, well, you can definitely do that with this. And I'll just give you a little quick illustration. Try to do this very quickly with one hand. But there you go, and you see how that's kept it all together now, and it's a nice tidy little bundle. You may notice that I have a large piece of Velcro around this too. So what I've done here is they have a little belt clip where you can hook that onto your belt just to keep it secure or fasten it somehow. I've utilised this with a bit of thicker Velcro for the same purpose, that I can now fasten this whenever I want very, very quickly onto your light stand or your side of your body, your belt, or whatever you want to do, camera bag, and you can fasten that very, very quickly with a bit of Velcro. It's just a thicker version of exactly the same strips. So I think they're fantastic, and I just wanted to run you through some of these accessories. Buying double-sided Velcro in kit form like this from your local hardware store, absolutely magnificent way of tying things up nice and neat and tidy and keeping them safe and together. So that's all I've got for you today. I hope you found that a little bit interesting. And again, thank you once again for your time, and I hope you have a wonderful photography experience.